Today we are starting with the discussion of the test series, and in that test series discussion, it is for test number one. Test number one topic is micro market structure and macro classical and Keynesian model. So limited topic is there. So questions related to the market structure and questions related to the classical and the ISLM in the macro section. So first of all, I will be explaining the overall strategy towards the test series. So if you are appearing in 2025 mains, your strategy will be different to deal with the test series. And if you are appearing preparing for the next year, that is for mains 2026, then your strategy will be different. So including the daily answer writing practice also. So you have to incorporate your daily answer writing practice along with this formal test. So this formal test is basically for that 3 hours. So what we are going to discuss, test number 1 is for that 3 hour. Now, if you are appearing in 2025 mains, so latest by 25th of June, you must have written test number 1 and test number 2. So test number 1 and test number 2. So just I have prepared a brief strategy for 2025 as well as for 2026. So if you are appearing this year by 25th of June, test number 1 and test number 2, that is complete micro or complete macro. But before that, try to cover your daily answer writing. So daily answer writing is 5 question every day. 1 week was scheduled for micro, another week was scheduled for macro. तो मोस्टली माइक्रो और मैक्रो के जो डेली आंसर वाले क्वेश्चन है वो ऑलरेडी अपलोडेड है. यू कैन फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट दोज क्वेश्चन, दैट मीन्स 70 क्वेश्चन हियर फॉर 2 week, and then write test number 1 and test number 2. So after writing that 70 question, then you are writing test number 1 and test number 2. But if you are appearing in next year to mains 2026, then you can, rather than writing every day, you can choose alternate day. That means in a month write about 14 tests. In a month about write down 70 क्वेश्चन ऑन डेली बेसिस. तो डेली आंसर वाले पार्ट में 70 क्वेश्चन आपको यहाँ पे मंथ में लेना है और यहाँ पे आपको 15 डेज में करने हैं. एंड योर टेस्ट नंबर 1 and 2 शुड बी बाय जुलाई एंड. तो नेक्स्ट मंथ की बेसिकली मैंने स्टडी बता रखी है कि व्हाट यू हैव टू डू फॉर द इनिशियल पार्ट. एंड देन टेस्ट नंबर 3 इज फॉर मनी बैंकिंग एंड फाइनेंस. टेस्ट नंबर 4 is for Indian economy one part. Test number 5 and 6 will be for international and growth and development, again sectional for international and growth and development. Test number 7 is for remaining part of the paper 2. So 7 test is basically sectional and 5 tests will be full length, that is full syllabus. So test number 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 is basically the comprehensive test, and test number 1 to test number 7 is your sectional test. But सेक्शनल का फॉर्मेट भी कंप्लीट होना है, मतलब 2 सेक्शन में क्वेश्चन होंगे और टोटल जो 28 क्वेश्चन होते हैं वैसे रहेंगे. तो इवन फॉर द सेक्शनल यू हैव टू अपीयर और द पेपर ऑफ द क्वेश्चन पेपर फॉर्मेट विल बी अकॉर्डिंग टू द यूपीएससी फॉर्मेट. तो जो फुल लेंथ का पैटर्न होगा और जो सेक्शनल का होगा, दोनों का क्वेश्चन पेपर पैटर्न सिमिलर होना है. तो फॉर 2025 ऑब्वियसली यू डोंट हैव मच ऑफ टाइम. तो डेली आंसर और रेगुलर टेस्ट को आपको इनकॉर्पोरेट करना है. ट्राई टू कंप्लीट इट बाय फर्स्ट सेकंड वीक ऑफ अगस्त, आई विल से, बिकॉज मेंस इज शेड्यूल फ्रॉम 22nd of अगस्त. सो सेकंड वीक ऑफ अगस्त तक आपका टेस्ट नंबर 1 टू टेस्ट नंबर 12 हो जाना चाहिए. एंड इन टर्म्स ऑफ द डेली आंसर, इट इज 60 डेज प्रोग्राम. तो 60 डेज में आपने बेसिकली into 5, that means 300 question here. और 12 regular test है. Every test has 28 question. I think it is 336. So total number of question that you are attempting is about 636. Good enough number of question. ठीक है, पैटर्न दोनों के अंदर वही रखना. यहाँ भी आपको डेली आंसर वाले 60 डेज करने हैं, बट यू कैन स्प्रेड इट फॉर, rather than completing in 2 months, you can spread it for the 4 months. Clear? So start with the test number 1. Test number 1, just see the question first. ठीक है, स्ट्रक्चर देखिएगा पेपर का वही है. इंस्ट्रक्शन मोस्टली most of you are aware of that. So section A and section B, there will be 2 sections. First question and 5th question is compulsory, and attempt at least 1 question from each section. Total number of question you have to attempt is 5. That means you are basically attempting 19 parts out of 28. उस 19 में 10 तो कंपल्सरी हो गए, 5 in section A and 5 in section B. So I will start with section A. So in this discussion, I will be taking only section A question, and the subsequent I will take section B of test number 1. So the first question is the first question. Balanced budget is not fiscal neutral. You have to basically comment. Balanced budget is not fiscal neutral. What is the meaning of that statement? It is not fiscal neutral. If it would have been neutral, then balanced budget will not affect income. But if I am saying that it is not neutral, it means it will affect income. So when balanced budget is not neutral, it means even when government expenditure change and tax change both are equal. That means there is change in government expenditure as well as there is change in tax, and both are equal, so that budget is balanced. Still there will be a positive effect on income. That is the meaning of the statement. So in that sense we say that balanced budget is not neutral. Now question is how to elaborate. To elaborate, first of all you can provide the definition of the balanced budget, or you can say balanced budget multiplier, and then go on to explain what is the expansionary effect of government expenditure, what will be the contractionary effect of tax, why expansionary effect of government expenditure is more as compared to contractionary effect of tax, and therefore balanced budget will not be neutral in the sense that in the case of balanced budget the income of economy will increase. So when you explain this question, first A part, first explain the meaning of the term balanced budget by stating that government budget can be balanced if change in the government expenditure is equal to change in the tax. Now what will be the change in income because of change in government expenditures? So, delta y due to delta g. Now that will depend upon multiplier, and simple multiplier is 1 upon 1 minus MPC, ignoring or assuming that small t is 0, small m is 0. मतलब income tax rate 0 है और import की propensity that is also 0. So, or you can say it is a closed economy. Now this will be government expenditure effect, and if you add the tax effect, so if there is change in tax, income get contracted. So you write minus C upon 1 minus C, and why income get contracted? Income get contracted because when tax will be imposed, it will reduce disposable income. When it will reduce disposable income, thereby it will reduce consumption. But the amount of decline in consumption will be less than the decrease in disposable income, because MPC is not 1, it is less than 1, fraction में number है. अगर income decrease हो रहा है due to tax by 100, then consumption will not fall by 100, because some part of decline in disposable income will be absorbed by decline in saving also. So you have to include that statement in your answer. So what will be the combined effect? The combined effect is that delta y will be equal to, you can add these two effect, इन दोनों को add कर लेना. So that will be delta g upon 1 minus c plus minus c upon 1 minus c or delta t. Now in the next step you can simply write delta g over 1 minus c, right, now minus 1 minus c into delta g, because budget is balanced, therefore in place of delta t you can write delta g. Clear? Then you can take a delta g common, and it could be written as 1 minus c upon 1 minus c into delta g, and therefore delta y over delta g is equal to 1. इसलिए कहते हैं बैलेंस बजट मल्टीप्लायर की वैल्यू 1 होती है. 1 का मतलब हो गया कि इनकम का चेंज और गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर का चेंज इक्वल होगा. तो द रीजनिंग यू हैव टू बेसिकली ऐड, मीनिंग बताना है और उसके बाद आपको यह समझाना है कि वाई effect of tax is less, and use the keywords like expansionary effect of government expenditure, contractionary effect of tax. Tax reduces aggregate demand, government expenditure increases aggregate demand, but by how much it will change, that will depend upon multiplier. Clear? So obviously you can see that in the model answer part as also. ठीक है, ये अपलोडेड आपको मिल जाएगा, यू कैन डाउनलोड इट फ्रॉम देयर. Balanced budget means change in government expenditure and change in tax are equal. Government budget directly affect the level of income in two separate ways. First, government expenditure are component of AD. Second, tax affect the relation between output and income and disposable income available for the consumption. However, the expansionary effect of government expenditure on income is greater than contractionary effect of tax on income. तो इस तरीके के जो लाइन है क्रिटिकल वो यूज करने हैं आपको. This is because tax affect disposable income by size of tax, but decline in consumption less than decline in disposable income, as some decline in income is absorbed by decline in saving as well, because MPC is between 0 and 1. So इस ये पैराग्राफ की है. Reasoning is more important. Remember, it is not just that you will simply write equation and say that balance budget is 1 or positive and therefore there will be a positive effect on income. You have to support it by your explanation. So this is first question. Then question number 2. Second is, read question number 2. Explain the significance and limitation of Chamberlain model of monopolistic competition. Question kar explain the significance and limitation of Chamberlain model. Significance and limitation of Chamberlain model of monopolistic competition. What is the significance? You can start by saying monopolistic competition is characterized by large number of firms producing differentiated product and entry and exit is free. Then Chamberlain, basically the model of Chamberlain had made two important assumptions. One, firms are producing differentiated product, but all firm has identical cost. Second, demand in the market is uniformly distributed, which means every firm has equal demand. So we have made assumption that demand is identical and cost is also identical. When demand and cost both will be identical, in that condition, if we explain equilibrium of one firm, we actually explain equilibrium of all the firm. And when we explain equilibrium of all the firm, we can say that market is also in equilibrium. So after stating that part, just highlight the significance part. What is the significance of the Chamberlain model? So significance number 1 is that Chamberlain introduced product differentiation concept, and therefore product differentiation and selling strategy are the two important policy tools now. Micro mein usually we study price output determination, but now we are discussing about the product differentiation as well as selling strategy. Another important significance was Chamberlain introduced the concept of proportional demand curve. तो perceived demand curve और proportional demand curve के concept को add कर रखा Chamberlain ने, and by combining these two, perceived and proportional, actually you get the king demand curve, which has been used extensively in the oligopoly model. So one significance is product differentiation. Second significance is introduction of perceived and proportional demand curve. As you know, perceived demand curve is drawn on the assumption that others will not reduce the price or others will not change the price. And proportional demand curve is drawn on the assumption that all will charge same price. So if you incorporate both, then we can say that upper part is elastic, lower part is inelastic. Therefore, you get king demand curve. So Paul-Swiji model में जो king demand curve, it is based upon perceived and proportional demand curve. तो ये दो important उसका significance समझाने हैं. Then what are the limitation? So what are the limitation of the Chamberlain model? Number 1, Chamberlain का ये कहना है कि products are differentiated, but firm का behavior वो independent मान रहा है. Each firm will behave independently and products are differentiated. Plus Chamberlain model say that entry is free, जबकि product differentiated है, but अगर product differentiated है तो entry free नहीं हो सकती है, because if your product is different from other firm product, you have to advertise about your product, so entry is actually not free. Chamberlain model में firms का behavior myopic माना गया है, मतलब firm behave करता है that as firm will reduce the price, others will not reduce the price. Actually others reduce the price, but the firms assume that others will not reduce the price. So such type of behavior is myopic behavior. So using the myopic behavior Chamberlain model has been explained. So once you answer the question number 2, you have to basically highlight those points. So you can start by monopolistic competition, general introduction. Chamberlain model of monopolistic competition uses the following assumption. Despite producing differentiated product, they have identical cost, and consumers' preferences are evenly distributed among different firms, so that each firm has equal market share. The implication of this assumption is that when one firm is in equilibrium, then all other firms are also in equilibrium, and market will also be in equilibrium. फिर उसके बाद significance ऐड करेंगे, and then you have to point out the limitation. The assumption of product differentiation and independent action of competitor are inconsistent. Product अलग भी है और हम assume कर रहे हैं कि behavior independent होगा, they are not consistent. It is a fact that firms are continuously aware of actions of competitors, so it is very difficult to accept myopic behavior of firms implied by the model. The assumption of product differentiation also inconsistent with assumption of free entry. Product अगर अलग है तो entry will not be free. The concept of industry is destroyed because products are differentiated and we cannot add them to get the market supply curve. And each product is an industry in its own way, and heterogeneous goods cannot be added to get the industry supply curve. So few limitations here Kotsanis may has it is points given है. If you have read that chapter monopolistic competition, तो वहाँ पे ये points limitation के form में already added. Now question number 1C. One C is again from macro. तो जैसे combination of micro and macro question है. To what extent can fiscal policy offset the limitation of monetary policy during liquidity trap? Read the question again. To what extent fiscal policy can offset the limitation of monetary policy during liquidity trap? The first thing you can define the term liquidity trap first. Most important term used here. So liquidity trap basically refers to the situation which arise at a critical low rate of interest where people prefer to hold idle cash rather than interest earning bond. But such situation will arise only at a low rate of interest. और सिर्फ low rate of interest पे arise होगा. At a critical low rate of interest जहाँ पे bond का return और cash का return equal हो गया. Now naturally in the liquidity trap monetary policy will not work because monetary policy usually works through transmission mechanism, and transmission mechanism has two steps. In the first step, when money supply increases, rate of interest will reduce. And why rate of interest will reduce? Because people use that money supply to buy bond. So once they start buying bond, the value of bond will increase and that will reduce rate of interest. So, and then when interest rate will reduce, in the second stage, investment will rise, aggregate demand will rise, income will rise. Liquid trap में क्या होता है? Stage 1 is not operating. Stage 1 is not operating. That means transmission mechanism का पहला stage fail हो गया. So if interest rate is not declining, then investment will not increase and therefore no change in income. So how can fiscal policy offset? Now fiscal policy does not operate through change in interest rate. Fiscal policy का change autonomous है, वो independent from interest rate है. So if economy is in the liquidity trap, then monetary policy cannot take economy out of that trap. Fiscal policy can. You can add that part by first explain those things, and then liquid trap में actually the LM curve becomes horizontal because interest elasticity of money demand becomes infinite. So you cannot reduce interest rate further. So if money supply increases, then LM curve cannot shift. So income will remain same. But if there is a fiscal expansion, now since fiscal policy does not operate through change in interest rate, therefore fiscal policy can work. So that point you have to basically add to what extent fiscal policy offset the limitation of monetary policy during liquidity trap. Then D part of the question, D part is why increase in government spending does not affect classical AD. Classical AD is not affected by increase in government expenditure, but why? So again, important part is that classical AD. So you can say that classical AD is derived from quantity theory of money. And according to that, MV is equal to PY. So classical AD is actually derived from quantity theory of money. So given any quantity of money, let's say 100, velocity 4, there can be many combination of P into Y. And the product of that P into Y will become 400. So it is basically rectangular hyperbola in shape. Classical AD is derived from quantity theory of money. That means without any reference to the government expenditure. So naturally, when government expenditure will change, classical AD will not change. Classical AD change होता है because of change in quantity of money. But आपको elaborate करना है कि why government expenditure change will not affect AD. So for that purpose, you use loanable fund theory of rate of interest. So apply that loanable fund theory of rate of interest to answer this D part. So in that loanable fund, there is a supply of fund, which is saving, demand for fund, investment. Assume that initially G was equal to T. Okay? Now as government expenditure increases, it will become greater than T. As government expenditure increases, demand for loanable fund will shift. And this will become I plus G minus T. So initially interest rate was R1. Now interest rate will be R2. So initially saving was determined by this. Now saving will be determined by this point. So rate of interest increase has two adjustment, और ये main part है आपके आंसर का. It will have two adjustment. Interest rate change act as a stabilizer. It will keep aggregate demand stable. But how it will keep AD stable? As rate of interest increases, saving will increase. And it will increase by, अब सेविंग का अमाउंट अगर R1 पे कैलकुलेट करेंगे तो ये नंबर आना है, R2 पे कैलकुलेट करेंगे तो ये नंबर. So saving increases by this distance. You can mark that distance here. ये पार्ट मैंने ये मार्क कर दिया. Saving increase and increase in saving will be by distance A. Increase in saving is equivalent to decline in consumption. So that is measured by A. And at the same time, high interest rate will reduce investment. So initially when interest rate was R1, investment was determined by this. At R2, investment will be determined by this number. So at R2, investment will decrease. And it will decrease by distance B. Therefore, consumption decline plus investment decline is equal to A plus B, which is equal to government expenditure increase. And therefore, aggregate demand, which is sum of C plus I plus G, remains stable. G का increase और C plus I का decrease equivalent. In that way, AD remains stable. It acts as a stabilizer. तो ये पॉइंट मेन है आपके आंसर में. तो क्लासिकल एडी पहले डिफाइन कर देंगे, हाउ इट हैज बीन डिराइव वो बता दीजिएगा. देन एक्सप्लेन व्हाई गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर चेंज विल नॉट अफेक्ट क्लासिकल एग्रीगेट डिमांड. नाउ आफ्टर दैट E part is a natural monopoly. Again, question from micro. What is natural monopoly? Explain why a monopolist cannot be forced to charge a price equal to marginal cost. What is natural monopoly? First of all, define. And why a monopolist cannot be forced to charge price equal to the marginal cost. So first thing, natural monopoly arises usually in those industry where average cost of production continues to decline for a longer period of time. That means average cost of production continues to decline, which means economies of scale are realized up to a large scale of output. and it can happen in those industries which involve initial fixed cost very high, like construction of metro, railways, water distribution, electricity distribution. Now, generally you will find only one provider. But why there is only one provider? The reason is if it will be provided by one firm, the cost will be lower. If it will be provided by multiple firms, the cost will be higher. So normally for the natural monopoly, the average cost is declining. And if average cost is declining, then marginal cost will be continuously below it, because MC usually cut AC at from the minimum point. But if AC is declining, then MC will be throughout lower than the marginal cost. Now, given that average cost is declining, marginal cost will be always throughout below it. So if we are discussing with a monopoly, that means demand curve is negative. Corresponding to that, MR will be. So if you maximize the profit, MR equal to MC, then outcome will be this. MR equal to MC का पॉइंट यहाँ मार्क किया और प्राइस की वैल्यू यहाँ से मार्क. If this will happen if it is unregulated monopolist, but normally the natural monopolists are regulated. That means government appoint authority and they try to regulate the price charged by them. अब प्रॉब्लम जो क्वेश्चन पूछा गया कि why a monopolist cannot be forced to charge price equal to marginal cost. So if we try to keep price equal to marginal cost, तो price equal to marginal cost का मतलब हो गया डिमांड और एमसी का इंटरसेक्शन. So if government will try to keep this price equal to the marginal cost, then at that price quantity will be this. So P into Q will become, this area will become the revenue. But for that quantity, average cost is higher. If average cost is higher, then total cost will be more. So this area will turn out to be a loss. So if you try to keep price equal to MC, where MC is less than AC, then price will become lower than AC, which means there will be always loss. So monopolists cannot operate in loss continuously. So that is why a monopolist cannot be forced to charge a price equal to the marginal cost. Clear? तो ये कंपल्सरी क्वेश्चन में 5 क्वेश्चन थे. आई थिंक 3 फ्रॉम मैक्रो एंड 2 फ्रॉम माइक्रो. एक मोनोपोलिस्टिक और नेचुरल मोनोपोली का एंड other question from macro. Generally you will have about I will say 7-8 minutes to answer each question. ठीक है, 19 क्वेश्चन इन टोटल करने एंड 3 आवर का टाइम है. दैट मीन्स लेस देन 10 मिनट्स ऑन एन एवरेज है. उसमें आपको 20 मार्क वाले क्वेश्चन भी करने हैं, तो नेचुरली विल राइट टेक मोर टाइम फॉर द 20 मार्कर. तो फॉर द कंपल्सरी आंसर यू हैव अबाउट 7 to 8 minutes. So in that 7 to 8 minute about 1 or 1.5 page अगर आप कंटेंट लिख लेते that will be okay. But you have to be very effective. Initial paragraph कंटेंट वो सब एग्जैक्ट आना चाहिए. मॉडल आंसर से ट्राई टू जस्ट इनकॉर्पोरेट कि व्हाट ऐसे लिक्विड ट्रैप डिफाइन किया है. ये डेफिनेशन याद होना चाहिए कि लिक्विड ट्रैप इज अ सिचुएशन इन विच liquidity preference may become virtually absolute in the sense that almost everyone prefer to hold idle cash rather than bond. At least ये लाइन मुझे याद होनी चाहिए so that मुझे वहाँ डेफिनेशन बनानी नहीं है. वो अगर मुझे लाइन मालूम है एग्जैक्टली वो टर्म है एज इट इज को एक्सप्लेन कर देना. ठीक है. सो दैट इज व्हाई यू नीड टू राइट अ लॉट, अदरवाइज इट विल टेक टाइम और एग्जामिनेशन हॉल में कुछ नए क्वेश्चन भी डील करने होंगे आपको. कम टू क्वेश्चन नंबर 2. क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 के अंदर एक न्यूमेरिकल है और कोऑर्डिनेट 10 टेकलबर and one theoretical question is this. In fact, 2 theoretical. One is for the excess capacity and this is a new question. 2A is discuss the Stekelberg model of oligopoly. How does it differ from coordinate model in terms of assumption about firm behavior? And what is the significance of first mover advantage in this model? So 2 or 3 parts of the question. Discuss the Stekelberg model of oligopoly. What is the Stekelberg model of oligopoly? In this Stekelberg, first of all, Stekelberg model of oligopoly is an example of non-coalescive oligopoly. and in that non-collisive oligopoly we assume that one firm is sufficiently sophisticated to incorporate the reaction of the other firm. That means one firm take the lead, and that sophisticated firm or the leader know how follower is going to react, and incorporating that reaction curve, leader maximizes its own profit. So that idea of a stakeholder model you have to write upfront. Now it differs from the coordinate model in the sense that in coordinate model both firms behavior were naive. The conjectural variation was zero there. Each firm assumed that when they determine their own quantity, the quantity produced by the other firm will remain same. But in this Stekelberg, one firm is leading. That leader will set quantity first. Given that quantity, follower will react. But how follower will react, it is known to the leader. So leader maximizes the profit, its own profit, subject to the reaction curve of the follower. इसलिए outcome हमारा different होता है. And what is the significance of the first mover advantage? The significance is the leader who will move first will produce more quantity. Thereby you force the competitor to react by producing less quantity. A product homogeneous है, so price of the product will remain same. So naturally the firm producing more will have more revenue. Firm producing less will have less revenue. So firm producing more will have higher profit. Firm producing less will have a lower profit. That is the significance of first mover. So in that sense you say first mover advantage. अब इस फर्स्ट मूवर एडवांटेज को इनफैक्ट आप ग्राफिकली जब शो कर देंगे रिएक्शन का हुआ फॉर्म 1, रिएक्शन का हुआ फॉर्म 2. If it is a coordinate model, intersection, that point will be coordinate Nash-Shikler. But if it is a Stekelberg model, the leader will maximize the profit. Suppose firm 1 is leader, this is best response of firm 1 or firm 1 leader. So leader का profit maximize होगा subject to the reaction curve of follower. This will be the point. This will be for Stekelberg. ये Stekelberg के लिए. Clear? All naturally the profit of leader is more and the profit of follower will be less as compared to the coordinate model. That quantity जब आप determine करेंगे Stekelberg model में या leader के लिए, quantity produced by the leader will be more as compared to quantity produced by the follower, and naturally the profit of leader will also be more than the profit of follower. और अगर आप इसे कंपेयर करोगे कोऑर्डिनेट मॉडल से तो कोऑर्डिनेट मॉडल के कंपैरिजन में भी लीडर इज प्रोड्यूसिंग मोर एंड प्रॉफिट ऑफ लीडर विल बी मोर एंड फॉलोअर प्रॉफिट विल बी लेस बिकॉज क्वांटिटी विल आल्सो बी लेस. अब ये कंसेप्ट आई थिंक दिस विल बिकम फर्दर क्लियर व्हेन यू अप्रोच दिस क्वेश्चन in terms of the न्यूमेरिकल क्वेश्चन में क्या है, मार्केट का डिमांड फंक्शन गिवन है जस्ट बिकॉज आई थिंक अगर लास्ट 10 ईयर का क्वेश्चन देखो तो 2009 में देयर वाज वन न्यूमेरिकल कोऑर्डिनेट मॉडल स्टेकरबर्ग का, 2013 में भी न्यूमेरिकल है, फिर आई थिंक 2019 में 18 में और 2022 के अंदर भी है. तो अबाउट 3-4 टाइम्स दिस क्वेश्चन हैज बीन आस्क्ड. सो दिस इज अ बट एन इजी क्वेश्चन. जब स्टेप पता होना चाहिए कि व्हाट यू हैव टू डू. Read that question first. Question number 2. एक मार्केट का डिमांड फंक्शन गिवन है Q इक्वल टू 160 माइनस 2P वेयर Q इज Q1 प्लस Q2. पहली बात तो ये जब कभी फंक्शन इस फॉर्मेट में गिवन हो आप इसको प्राइस के टर्म में पहले लिखिएगा. दैट मींस आई विल राइट 2P इज इक्वल टू 160 माइनस Q और फिर P के टर्म में लिख देंगे 80 माइनस 1/2Q. बिकॉज टोटल रेवेन्यू हमेशा क्वांटिटी के टर्म में लिखना है, डिफरेंशिएशन भी क्वांटिटी के टर्म में होता है. दैट मींस इफ डायरेक्ट इज गिवन Q इक्वल टू कन्वर्ट इट इन टर्म्स ऑफ P फर्स्ट, और अगर P डायरेक्टली गिवन है नो नीड टू कन्वर्ट. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन कह रहा है व्हाट इज एंड मार्जिनल कॉस्ट इज गिवन एज 2. व्हाट आर प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइजिंग क्वांटिटी फॉर टू फर्म इफ दे एक्ट एज कोऑर्डिनेट कॉम्पिटिटर. अगर वो कोऑर्डिनेट कॉम्पिटिटर है तो क्वांटिटी बताओ. व्हाट आर प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइजिंग प्राइस एंड क्वांटिटी इफ दे एक्ट एज बर्ट एंड कॉम्पिटिटर. एंड थर्ड है स्टेकलवर। मतलब एक ही क्वेश्चन के अंदर कोऑर्डिनेट, बर्टन, स्टेकलवर तीनों कंसेप्ट क्लियर हो जाएगा। इन द कोऑर्डिनेट मॉडल वी डिटरमाइन द रिएक्शन कर्व, इंटरसेक्शन ऑफ रिएक्शन कर्व विल डिटरमाइन द क्वांटिटी। तो वन बाय वन करके सॉल्व कर लीजिए। Q is 160 minus 2p, 160 minus 2p, 160 माइनस 2p ये गिवन है। इसको मैंने पहले प्राइस के टर्म में कन्वर्ट कर दिया। p is 80 minus 1 by 2, so 0.5 q, and marginal cost of production is given as 2. First you write a reaction curve. आप चाहे तो उसका डेफिनेशन वहां लिख सकते हो कि रिएक्शन कर्व शोज प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइजिंग क्वांटिटी प्रोड्यूस बाय वन फर्म और एनी गिवन क्वांटिटी प्रोड्यूस बाय द अदर फर्म। So that means you have to write profit equation. So that will be TR1 minus TC1. P into Q1, marginal cost constant given at 2. So it will be 2 into Q1. In place of price, write down this function. In place of price, you will write 80 minus 0.5, or in place of Q, you will write Q1 plus Q2 because that is market quantity into Q1 minus 2Q1. Clear है? P की जगह हमने ये लिखा है और इस Q की जगह Q1 plus Q2 लिख दिया। So this will be 80 Q1 minus 0.5 Q1 square minus 0.5 Q1 into Q2 minus 2 Q1, और इस प्रॉफिट के फंक्शन को डिफरेंशिएट करेंगे विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू Q1 कीपिंग Q2 कांस्टेंट। दैट विल बी 80 minus 0.5 into 2, so it will be only Q1 minus 0.5 Q2 minus 2 is equal to 0. ठीक है, कैलकुलेशन मिस्टेक से अवॉइड करनी है आपको। So we will write Q1 is equal to, that will become 78 minus 0.5 Q2. This is a reaction curve of firm 1. Q1 right side कर दीजिए, it will be 78 minus 0.5 Q2. अब इस इक्वेशन का मतलब है कि if you plot this equation graphically by writing here Q1 and Q2. So if I take Q2 0, then Q1 will be 78. तो Q2 अगर 0 करेंगे तो Q1 की वैल्यू 78 हो जाएगी, मतलब ये नंबर यहाँ पे 78 आ जाएगा। और अगर Q1 0 कर लेते हैं तो 78 by 0.5, दिस विल बिकम 156, और इन दोनों पॉइंट को स्ट्रेट लाइन से कनेक्ट कर देंगे। दिस इज रिएक्शन कर्व ऑफ फर्म 1, ये फर्म 1 का रिएक्शन कर्व है। एंड सिमिलरली यू विल राइट फॉर फर्म 2, सिमिलरली फॉर फर्म 2। अब सिंस डिमांड फंक्शन सेम है, कॉस्ट सेम है, तो इक्वेशन भी सेम आएगा। तो आप वहां से वो मेंशन कर सकते हैं कि सिंस बोथ आर फेसिंग सेम डिमांड, सेम कॉस्ट, therefore reaction curve will also be same. That means Q2 will be equal to 78 minus 0.5 Q1. सेम इक्वेशन तो आएगा बट प्लॉट करने पे डिफरेंट होना है। अब Q1 अगर 0 करते हैं तो Q2 की वैल्यू 78 हो जाएगी। दैट मीन्स इफ Q1 is 0, Q2 will be 78. ये नंबर यहाँ मार्क करना। Here you will write 78 और इधर इंटरसेप्ट 156 हो जाएगा। So now you have two equation and two unknown. Q1 is equal to 78 minus 0.5 Q2, इस Q2 की जगह ये वैल्यू पुट कर देना तो Q1 की वैल्यू आ जाएगी। इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट पे Q1 और Q2 की वैल्यू कैलकुलेट कर लीजिए। इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट पे Q1 और Q2 कैलकुलेट कर लीजिए। ठीक है, तो यू कैन सॉल्व दिस क्वेश्चन। ठीक है, सॉल्यूशन में यू कैन फाइंड, जस्ट चेकिंग द इक्वेशन करेक्ट है, प्लॉटिंग सही है, सेकंड के लिए प्लॉटिंग है, और दोनों इक्वेशन को अगर सॉल्व कर लेंगे तो Q1 और Q2 की वैल्यू आ जाएगी 52 52। दिस इज आंसर। दैट मीन्स जो मार्केट की क्वांटिटी हो जाएगी वो 104 है, उस क्वांटिटी को डिमांड फंक्शन में डाल देंगे तो प्राइस आ जाएगा विच इज 28. क्लियर? तो दिस इज वन पार्ट. नाउ वन पार्ट क्लियर है क्वेश्चन का. सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चन वाज व्हाट इज बर्टन सॉल्यूशन. अब बर्टन सॉल्यूशन में क्या ध्यान रखना है, बर्टन में अगर प्रोडक्ट होमोजेनस है, और पता कैसे चलेगा होमोजेनस है? If you are adding the quantity of first form and second form, you can add quantity only when it is homogeneous. So if you say that Q1 is basically Q1 plus Q2, अगर ये लिख रहे हैं मतलब प्रोडक्ट होमोजेनस है, और प्रोडक्ट अगर होमोजेनस है तो बर्टन सॉल्यूशन में प्राइस इक्वल टू मार्जिनल कॉस्ट हो जाएगा, P इक्वल टू मार्जिनल कॉस्ट. तो प्राइस की जगह आपने मेंशन कर दिया वो 80 माइनस 0.5 Q एंड MC इज 2. तो यहाँ से Q की वैल्यू कैलकुलेट कर लेंगे और जो टोटल क्वांटिटी आएगी वो इक्वली डिवाइडेड हो जाएगा बिटवीन टू फॉर्म्स, फॉर्म 1 एंड फॉर्म 2. तो बर्टन सॉल्यूशन डायरेक्ट है. सिंस प्रोडक्ट इज होमोजेनस, देयरफॉर प्राइस इक्वल टू MC, therefore you get quantity as 156 and Q1 and Q2 will be 78 each. इसमें कुछ ज़्यादा एक्सप्लेनेशन नहीं करना है. ये एक्चुअली बर्टन पैराडॉक्स है. प्रोडक्ट होमोजेनस होगा तो प्राइस इक्वल टू MC हो जाएगा एंड फर्म्स का प्रॉफिट जीरो हो जाएगा. दिस वाज द इजी पार्ट. थर्ड में कहा गया इफ व्हाट आर द आउटपुट लेवल फॉर द टू फर्म इफ फर्म वन एक्ट एज द स्टेकहोल्डर लीडर. अब अगर एक फर्म लीडर है तो लीडर वाले केस में क्या होना है, सॉल्यूशन इज अ लिटिल डिफरेंट इन द सेंस if one firm is leader then we assume that leader know the reaction curve of follower. मैं जो कह रहा हूँ उस स्टेप के अकॉर्डिंगली वहां सॉल्व करेंगे. we know that leader, we assume that leader know the reaction curve of follower. So if firm one is leader, you have to write the reaction curve of follower. reaction curve of follower means Q2 equal to, ये ऑलरेडी लिखा हुआ हमारा इक्वेशन आपने लिख रखा ऑलरेडी. सेकेंड फर्म का रिएक्शन का भी है 78 माइनस 0.5 Q1. देन स्टेप नंबर 2 में राइट द प्रॉफिट ऑफ लीडर. प्रॉफिट ऑफ लीडर दैट इज पाई 1 इज इक्वल टू TR1 माइनस TC1. इट इज P इंटू Q1 माइनस 5 इंटू Q1. इन प्लेस ऑफ प्राइस ये ऑलरेडी ये पार्ट भी आपने कर रखा है. 80 माइनस 0.5, 80 माइनस 0.5 Q1 plus Q2 into Q1 minus 5 Q1. So this is 80 Q1 minus 0.5 Q1 square minus 0.5 Q1 into Q2 minus 5, or it is not 5, it is 2 Q1 minus 2 Q1. अब अगर कोऑर्डिनेट मॉडल होता है तो क्या करते हैं, इस फंक्शन को हम डिफरेंशिएट कर लेते हैं विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू क्वांटिटी Q1 अज्यूमिंग Q2 कांस्टेंट. बट ये स्टेकहोल्डर मॉडल है, तो स्टेकहोल्डर मॉडल में लीडर विल इनकॉर्पोरेट द रिएक्शन कर्व ऑफ फॉलोअर. दैट मींस इन प्लेस ऑफ Q2 हम Q2 को कांस्टेंट नहीं मानेंगे. Q2 ये इक्वेशन आप यहाँ पे सब्स्टिट्यूट करोगे पहले, बिकॉज लीडर नो द रिएक्शन कर्व ऑफ फॉलोअर. स्टेप इक्वेशन लिखोगे पाई 1 इक्वल टू 80 Q1 माइनस 0.5 Q1 स्क्वायर माइनस 0.5 Q1 और Q2 की जगह 78 माइनस 0.5 Q1 देन माइनस 2 Q1 और फिर डिफरेंशिएट करना. अब यहाँ से डिफरेंशिएट करके इक्वेट करोगे 0 से तो Q1 की वैल्यू आ जाएगी. और एक बार Q1 की वैल्यू जब आ जाए यहाँ पे लीडर ने सेट क्वांटिटी कर दी, इस क्वांटिटी को इस इक्वेशन में डाल देंगे तो Q2 की वैल्यू आ जाएगी. तो ये स्टेकहोल्डर मॉडल के अंदर का सॉल्यूशन होता है. रिएक्शन कर्व ऑफ फॉलोअर सबसे पहले, प्रॉफिट फंक्शन ऑफ लीडर, लीडर के प्रॉफिट में इनकॉर्पोरेट करोगे और Q1 की वैल्यू आ जाएगी 78 और फॉलोअर 39. और उस आउटकम को आप ग्राफ के अंदर शो कर दो जैसे पहले भी शो करे. इंटरसेक्शन कोऑर्डिनेट के लिए हो जाएगा और स्टेकहोल्डर का 78 और जो लीडर है उसकी क्वांटिटी बढ़ेगी, फॉलोअर की क्वांटिटी कम हो जाएगी. क्लियर? तो दिस वाज क्वेश्चन नंबर 2B. यूजुअली देखो अगर ये क्वेश्चन मिल जाता है पेपर के अंदर तो आई विल से इट इज अ इजी क्वेश्चन प्रोवाइडेड कोई कैलकुलेशन मिस्टेक आप ना करो. मतलब कोई कोर मैथ्स इन्वॉल्व नहीं हो रहा, कोई टिपिकल कैलकुलेशन नहीं है, जस्ट यू मस्ट नो द स्टेप. और एक दो क्वेश्चन जो पास्ट ईयर वाले ही अगर वो भी हम सॉल्व करके रख लेते हैं तो आई थिंक उससे बन जाता है क्वेश्चन. Then question number 2C. 2C, what does a monopolistically competitive market lead to excess capacity under price competition? ये क्वेश्चन डायरेक्टली PYQ का है, ठीक है. लास्ट ये आई थिंक 18 या 21 में क्वेश्चन आ रहा है, डायरेक्टली सेम है. Does monopolistically competitive market lead to excess capacity under price competition? Question mark. Does it lead to? First is explain excess capacity meaning. That excess capacity refers to the difference between ideal output and the actual output. What is an ideal output? Ideal output is associated with the minimum point of fallacy. That is those who criticize the model, Chamberlain model. Their argument is the minimum point of fallacy is the ideal. What is actual? The profit maximizing quantity. So according to them, Chamberlain monopolistic competition actually leads to some wastage of the resource and there will be some excess capacity. Their argument is firms are not producing at the minimum point of long run average cost curve. This is the ideal. So if this is the ideal and firms are actually producing at the declining part because demand curve negative slope है, तो free entry और exit की वजह से firm must be having only normal profit. So this is the quantity produced by the monopolist and this is the ideal quantity under competition. So critics say that this is the excess capacity, some resources are wasted. But Chamberlain is basically defending that. Chamberlain का ये कहना है कि if firms are engaged in price competition and entry is free, तो market के अंदर अगर entry free है and firms are engaged in price competition, when firms are engaged in price competition, then demand curve will be perceived demand curve. So with more and more firms entering into the market, this demand curve will become more and more flatter. If it is getting more and more flatter, it will be very close to the minimum point, but it can never be the minimum point. Minimum point पे tangent होने के लिए line horizontal होनी चाहिए. Minimum point पे एक horizontal line tangent हो सकती है, but horizontal होने के लिए product homogeneous होना चाहिए, जैसे perfect competition में होता है. But in monopolistic, firms are not producing homogeneous. They are actually producing differentiated product. So if firms are producing differentiated product, then with free entry and price competition, the perceived demand curve will become more and more flatter. So this perceived demand curve will get more flatter. So if this perceived demand curve gets flatter, then quantity will be close to that minimum point, but it will never be equal to that. So if there is a gap here, that gap was termed as the social cost. It is social cost of offering differentiated product, social cost of providing differentiated, social cost of offering variety of choices to the consumer. It is the consumer who wants differentiated product. So we cannot criticize market for doing it. Chamberlain is basically defending the excess capacity. Chamberlain का concept है कि monopolistic competition में excess capacity नहीं है if firms are engaged in price competition. But if firms are engaged in non-price competition like advertisement and so on, then there will be excess capacity. तो चैम्बरलिन मॉडल का ये आइडियल है जो प्राइस कंपटीशन के साथ हो रहा है, बट अगर इससे भी कम प्रोडक्शन हो, विच कुड बी इफ फर्म्स आर एंगेज इन द नॉन प्राइस कंपटीशन, if firms are engaged in non price competition, then the demand curve that will be relevant is proportional. A proportional demand curve is steeper as compared to the perceived. तो ये क्वांटिटी हो जाएगी. In that case, this can be termed as the excess capacity. ये उसने सोशल कॉस्ट कह रखा और ये एक्सेस कैपेसिटी है चैम्बरलिन वर्जन में. तो चैम्बरलिन वर्जन में एक्सेस कैपेसिटी होगा ओनली व्हेन फर्म्स आर एंगेज्ड इन, आई रिपीट, नॉन प्राइस कंपटीशन. If they are engaged in price competition, then there will be only social cost of offering differentiated product. Clear? So this description you have to basically provide here. And monopolistic competition has been criticized on the ground that it leads to too small firms, each working with excess capacity as measured by difference between ideal and actual output. इस तरीके की लाइन आप याद रखो. एक्सेस कैपेसिटी का क्वेश्चन ऑलमोस्ट आई विल से ऑल्टरनेट ईयर पे क्वेश्चन आ रहा है. However, the term excess capacity is misleading. In this case, it is said that firms in monopolistic market does not employ economies enough resource to reach at minimum point of fallacy. But Chamberlain argued that criticism of excess capacity and misallocation of resource is valid only if we assume that demand curve is horizontal. He argued that if demand curve is negatively sloped and firms are engaged in active price competition, then minimum point of fallacy cannot be considered as social optimum level of output. And Chamberlain said that consumers desire variety of goods, so product differentiation reflects consumers' choice who are willing to pay higher price. According to him, excess capacity arises only when firms are engaged in नॉन प्राइस कंपटीशन, और इसमें आप डायग्राम ऐड कर लेंगे. द डायग्राम इज, ठीक है, मॉडल आंसर में आप डायग्राम को ऐड करके एक मिनिमम पॉइंट यहाँ मार्क करना है. प्राइस कंपटीशन होने पे डिमांड का विल बी फ्लैटर, एंड इन द केस ऑफ नॉन प्राइस कंपटीशन इट विल बी proportional demand curve. So this point can be considered as the social cost and this point can be considered as excess capacity. ठीक है, जैसे उस डायग्राम के अंदर बने, तो ये you can add that. So this was question number 2. Now third question. Focus on this question number 3. Now this is from the macro section. Discuss classical view on monetary and fiscal policy. And why is monetary policy considered neutral? First discuss classical view on monetary and fiscal. Why is monetary policy considered neutral and fiscal policy seen ineffective in influencing real variables in the long run? Classical view पूछा गया monetary and fiscal policy का. Why monetary policy considered neutral and fiscal policy seen as ineffective in influencing real variable? मतलब आउटपुट एम्प्लॉयमेंट को फिजिकल पॉलिसी भी चेंज नहीं कर सकती है. तो क्लासिकल में मॉनेटरी न्यूट्रलिटी है, क्लासिकल डायकोटमी है, कुछ की वर्ड्स आने चाहिए क्वेश्चन के अंदर आंसर में. दैट इन द केस ऑफ क्लासिकल मॉडल इफ देयर विल बी अ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी चेंज लाइक मनी सप्लाई विल चेंज, देन ओनली एडी विल शिफ्ट विदाउट अफेक्टिंग द आउटपुट, बिकॉज क्लासिकल मॉडल का आउटपुट डिटरमाइन होता है बाय एग्रीगेट सप्लाई कर्व. क्लासिकल मॉडल में आउटपुट गेट डिटरमाइन फ्रॉम द सप्लाई साइड. The role of demand is only to determine price. So when money will change, then only AD will shift. As AD will shift, only price will change. When price will change, all other nominal numbers will change, like nominal wage या nominal wage का argument हो गया या price का argument हो गया. Money itself is nominal, price is another nominal, wage is the third nominal. All nominal will change in the same proportion, so that any real will not change. In that way it is neutral. And how fiscal policy is ineffective? Fiscal policy is usually ineffective because it will neither affect AS nor it will affect AD. Only one exception is there, and that exception is in the case of income tax rate change. When there will be income tax rate change, then output will be affected because supply curve will shift. When you are answering this part, third A, see you can use this form of diagram because ये 20 marker question you need to elaborate. प्रोडक्शन फंक्शन ड्रॉ किया है, लेबर डिमांड और लेबर सप्लाई है. लेबर सप्लाई, लेबर डिमांड, इक्वालिटी विल डिटरमाइन फुल एम्प्लॉयमेंट. From that full employment you can determine a full employment output. Draw the IS line. AD is determined by quantity of money. So this AD is based upon money supply M1. Intersection से यहाँ पे W1 by P1 real wage. So when quantity of money will increase, then AD will shift up. As AD will shift up, price will rise from P1 to P2. But as price increases, the real wage will fall. And at any real wage lower than this, labor market is not in equilibrium. In fact, excess demand for labor है. So due to excess demand for labor, wage will rise because it is classical model, wages are flexible. So as price rises from P1 to P2, wage will rise from W1 to W2. Employment remains same, output will remain same. In that way, money is neutral. फिस्कल पॉलिसी के अंदर ना तो एडी चेंज होगा ना ही एएस चेंज होगा. When you apply the fiscal policy, then government expenditure, if you increase government expenditure, then one question is how that government expenditure is financed. If it is financed by printing money, तो मनी सप्लाई चेंज होगी, फिर तो आर्गुमेंट ये लग जाएगा पूरा. इफ इट इज फाइनेंस बाय बोरोइंग, तो लोनेबल फंड का आर्गुमेंट लगा लेंगे. और लोनेबल फंड का आर्गुमेंट अगर आप लगाते हैं तो यू कैन अप्लाई दिस स्टेटमेंट जो पहले वाले कंपल्सरी क्वेश्चन में किया. दिस, if government increases expenditure and that is financed by borrowing, then AD will not change because interest rate will act as stabilizer. So you can incorporate that part. But only in one case there can be change, and that is the case where income tax rate will change. So in the case of income tax rate change, इनकम टैक्स रेट चेंज अगर हो रहा है तो उसका मतलब फिस्कल पॉलिसी में गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर टैक्स दोनों इंक्लूडेड है. इनकम टैक्स रेट चेंज में यू कैन अगेन यूज सिमिलर डायग्राम. फंक्शन, लेबर डिमांड, लेबर सप्लाई, एएस, एडी. Just remember that when we determine the labor supply, it is said to be a function of after tax real wage. So suppose this labor supply is based upon tax rate of 30%. Based upon 30%, we have this situation. If income tax rate decreases, then the labor supply will shift to the right. This is the new labor supply curve based upon 20% tax rate. So full employment will increase, and with more of labor, economy will produce more of the output. Original output was this. As economy produces more of output, AS will shift to the right. एक एक्सेप्शन सिर्फ है फिस्कल पॉलिसी में जिसमें रियल नंबर चेंज हो सकता है, and that will be only through supply side change, not because of demand side change. That was the requirement of this question number 3A. 3B में derive aggregate demand by using ISLM curve, मतलब Keynesian मॉडल में, and how it is different from the classical AD. क्लासिकल एडी और केनीशियन एडी की बात हो रही है, क्लासिकल और केनीशियन. सो इट इज 3B. केन्स के मॉडल में एग्रीगेट डिमांड इज डिराइव फ्रॉम गुड्स मार्केट इक्विलिब्रियम, दैट इज आईएस कर्व, as well as money market equilibrium, LM curve. And you know that along LM curve it is ky minus hi equal to m upon p, and along IS curve y equal to AD. So simultaneous term is y1 based upon a price p1. So we have 1 point. As price decreases from p1 to p2, LM curve will shift to the right because real money supply will increase. ये price अगर कम कर रहे हैं p, with given money real money supply will increase and LM curve will shift to the right. This is based upon ky minus hi equal to m upon p2. Rate of interest will fall, investment will increase, income will increase. So we have different income at a lower price, and by joining such points you get Keynesian aggregate demand curve. This is a ISLM में एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व का डेरिवेशन है, उसमें ऐड कर सकते हैं कि why you are getting it negatively slope, and the reason is as price decreases real money supply will increase and it will become greater than the money demand. The supply of money is more, we want to keep less. So in the Keynesian description, if supply of money is more and you want to keep less, you will use that cash to buy bond. As we buy bond, the value of bond will increase and rate of interest will reduce. You can see that initially interest rate was this, now interest rate is lower. This excess pay rate of interest. So due to this excess money supply, rate of interest will fall, and as a result investment will increase, that will increase aggregate demand, and therefore Y will increase. अब ये that means जब हमने AD derive किया तो while deriving AD according to ISLM we have taken goods market and money market both, दोनों market का इक्विलिब्रियम है. But when you draw it for the classical, we take only money market, only quantity theory of money. क्लासिकल कंसेप्ट के अंदर वी कंसिडर ओनली क्वांटिटी थ्योरी ऑफ मनी. क्लासिकल में यू डिराइव और राइट एम बी इक्वल टू पी वाई. Based upon a given quantity and velocity, there can be many combinations that will be consistent, and therefore you get rectangular hyperbola aggregate demand curve which depends upon quantity of money. So classical AD rectangular hyperbola है, Keynesian AD straight line. Classical AD can shift because of only quantity of money. Keynesian AD can shift because of money also, because of fiscal change also, because of government expenditure also. ये डिस्क्रिप्शन गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर की वजह से भी चेंज हो सकता है, बिकॉज y इज इक्वल टू सी प्लस आई प्लस जी. बट क्लासिकल केस में गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ने पे एडी चेंज नहीं होता है. तो आपको बेसिकली कंपेयर करना, बिकॉज ये क्वेश्चन आई थिंक क्लासिकल और केनीशियन का एग्रीगेट सप्लाई कब तो आ रखा है पेपर में, बट नॉट फॉर द एग्रीगेट डिमांड. देन थर्ड सी, that question first. Suppose that public taste changes in such a way that leisure becomes more desirable. How would you expect such change to affect output, employment and real wage in the classical model? Leisure becomes more desirable, that means you prefer more of leisure. So if you prefer more of leisure, naturally worker will work less. Labor supply will shift to the left. Full employment will decrease. And as full employment will decrease, output will also decrease. And as output will decrease, aggregate supply will shift to the left. तो जो क्लासिकल का डायग्राम ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं, इसी डायग्राम में आप यूज कर सकते हैं. ये डिस्क्रिप्शन इनफैक्ट कॉमन हो रहा है, कई जगह आप इसको अप्लाई कर रहे हैं. फंक्शन लेबर डिमांड लेबर सप्लाई एएस एडी. क्लासिकल कंसेप्ट में ये बिल्कुल प्रैक्टिस होना चाहिए डायग्राम ड्रॉ करने का. If leisure is becoming more desirable, so at any given real wage, worker prefer to work less. So this labor supply curve will shift to the left. ये left की तरफ shift हो जाएगा. Full employment will decrease. With less labor employed, economy will produce less of the output. Yes will shift to the left. तो ये पूरा मॉडल फिर से कुछ कॉमन टर्म आपको स्टार्ट में लेने हैं, क्लासिकल कंसेप्ट को एक्सप्लेन करना है और इस डायग्राम को यूज करके एक्सप्लेन करोगे. Now come to the fourth question, which is last first section A. Clear this, just focus on these three now. ये कह रहा है explain how crowding out effect differs under classical and Keynesian assumption. What role do wage price rigidity play in shaping these outcomes? Read the question again. Explain how crowding out effect differs under classical and Keynesian assumption. तो फर्स्ट ऑब्वियसली द अगेन आई रिपीट, जो मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म होंगे उसको आप डिफाइन कर दो पहले. तो क्राउडिंग आउट एक्चुअली रेफर्स टू डिक्लाइन इन द प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट ड्यू टू इंक्रीज इन इंटरेस्ट रेट विच इज एन आउटकम ऑफ फिस्कल एक्सपेंशन. तो फिस्कल एक्सपेंशन के टर्म में क्राउडिंग आउट यूज करते हैं. एंड व्हाई इट एक्चुअली हैपेंस, बिकॉज व्हेन गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर इंक्रीजेस देयर विल बी मोर ऑफ डिमांड, मोर ऑफ इनकम. विथ मोर ऑफ इनकम देयर विल बी मोर मनी डिमांड. More money demand means we want to hold more cash. To keep more cash, you sell bond. Value of bond decreases and interest rate increases, which reduces investment. So that process need to be explained. But how it differs in the classical and the Keynesian assumption, and what role price rigidity? Actually, complete crowding out का जो केस होता है, वहां से आप डिफरेंशिएट कर सकते हो. Complete crowding out, generally we study that complete crowding out happens in the case of a vertical LM कर्व. दैट मीन्स अगर हमने क्लासिकल केस ले रखा है, वर्टिकल LM का बना रखा है, एंड यू टेक नेगेटिव स्लोप IS कर्व. So if there is a fiscal expansion and IS curve will shift, then only interest rate will rise without affecting output. So it is a case of complete crowding out. Generally when you draw this concept, we take price as constant. Constant price के ऊपर वो based है. But even if LM curve is positive, we can have complete crowding out. Positive LM में भी complete crowding out हो सकता है, provided price को flexible बना ले. दैट पॉइंट कैन बी इलेबोरेटेड. आप इसे आर्गुमेंट किसके पैरेलल यहाँ कंसीडर कर सकते हैं. I am basically taking the classical case, but I am taking polarity slope LM. तो क्लासिकल का मतलब हो गया आई एम ड्राइंग वर्टिकल लाइन AS एंड नेगेटिव स्लोप AD. इंटरसेक्शन से YF है. लोअर डायग्राम ISL ड्रॉ कर रहा हूं, बट आई एम टेकिंग नेगेटिव स्लोप IS and positive slope LM. Generally we discuss that if LM curve is positive slope, then it will be a partial crowding out, but I will show even with positive LM it can be complete crowding out provided price is flexible. So here you write price, but it is flexible. So with fiscal expansion, as IS curve will shift to the right, as IS curve will shift to the right, remember from that ISLM you have derived the aggregate demand, जैसे भी previous question में किया. So this aggregate demand can shift because of fiscal change also. As AD will shift at the same price, there will be more demand. Due to excess demand for goods, price will start rising. So it will rise from P1 to P2. Price flexible है. Price के increase होने पे real money supply will decrease and this LM curve will shift to the left. This LM curve will shift to the left and output will remain same. That means we have explained complete crowding out even when we take positive slope LM curve. So it can be possible if prices are flexible. तो ये पॉइंट आपको क्राउडिंग आउट के कंसेप्ट में ऐड कर देना है. Then fourth B is derive the short run supply curve of a competitive firm with the help of suitable diagram. ये क्वेश्चन आई कैन से इजी और डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन है. Short run supply curve of a competitive firm. So we know that short run supply curve of a competitive firm is marginal cost curve. But it is not the complete marginal cost curve. It is only that part of marginal cost curve which is above the average variable cost curve. Only that part which is above the ABC. Not only rising, it is that part which is above the ABC. Only that part is basically the marginal cost curve. And then you can go on to explain it by using diagram by stating that suppose this is the market demand, supply, and this is for the firm. और यहाँ से उसका सप्लाई का डिराइव कर लिया. So demand supply intersection I am taking here deliberately at upper value. You can draw the average cost curve, average variable cost curve. Passing through the minimum point, you can draw marginal cost line. MC equal to MR here. Firm will produce quantity Q3 at price P3. So P3 and Q3 को mark करके you get 1 point. And firm is having profit. Now if supply curve is a market का supply curve अगर यहाँ होता, in that case price would have been here. ये लाइन आप यहाँ से ड्रॉ कर लें डेलिबरेटली इन दोनों एवरेज कॉस्ट के बीच से. तो if price is P2, then MR equal to MC here. Firm will produce quantity Q2, but for this quantity firm will be having loss because average cost is above. But despite loss, firm will operate. And firm will operate because firm is having operating profit. इस क्वांटिटी का एवरेज वेरिएबल कॉस्ट कम है और प्राइस ज्यादा है, सो यू आर एबल टू कवर मोर देन वेरिएबल कॉस्ट, व्हिच मींस सम पार्ट ऑफ द फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट इज आल्सो कवर्ड. सो फर्म विल ऑपरेट डिस्पाइट लॉस. सो एट प्राइस P2, supply will be Q2. If price reduces and it becomes equal to the minimum of ABC, such as P1. So if price reduces below P1, then there will be no supply because then they will be operating loss. Supply curve actual में you can draw only till P1, and below P1 it is coinciding with the y axis, implying that quantity supplied will be 0. You can join only these points. You can draw it a straight line or non-linear. So this is the supply curve, which is nothing but marginal cost curve, but not the entire marginal cost curve. ये section हट गया supply curve का. You basically remove this section. This is not part of the supply curve. ठीक है. And the fourth C is define the peak load pricing. How does it differ from third degree price discrimination? Analyze graphically. पीक लोड प्राइसिंग का एक क्वेश्चन आई थिंक लास्ट ईयर भी है, इन टर्म्स ऑफ द पावर सेक्टर वो पूछा गया. तो पीक लोड प्राइसिंग कंसेप्ट बेसिकली से दैट as demand for a commodity varies during the peak and the off peak hour. So during the peak hour when firm has to produce more due to capacity constraint, the cost is higher. You are assuming that the marginal cost of production is rising. So during peak hour when you have to produce more, cost is higher, and during off peak hour when we need to produce less, cost will be less. Corresponding to both, you can draw the MR line. MR equal to MC for off peak hour, price is determined for off peak. For peak hour, MR equal to MC and price is determined from the peak hour. कंसेप्ट ये कह रहा है कि इफ यू अप्लाई द पीक लोड प्राइसिंग, लाइक इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का डिमांड डे में कम हो, डे में ज्यादा है, नाइट में कम है. मेट्रो सर्विसेज का डिमांड ऑफिस आवर में ज्यादा है, नाइट में कम हो गया. तो इफ डिमांड वेरीज देन कॉस्ट विल वेरी. व्हेन कॉस्ट विल वेरी द प्राइस शुड बी डिफरेंट. दैट इज द एप्लीकेशन ऑफ पीक लोड प्राइसिंग. If you do not apply peak load, you charge the same price, then it is inefficient distribution of goods between the peak and the off peak hour. And how it is different from the third degree discrimination? In the third degree discrimination, what happens that, if for example electricity है, तो electricity का एक commercial use है और एक household use है. तो हमने market को segregate कर रखा है between household use and कॉमर्शियल यूज, और ये बेस्ड अपॉन इलास्टिसिटी होती है. दोनों का डिमांड डिफरेंट है, इलास्टिसिटी डिफरेंट है. और प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइज करने के लिए MR1 मस्ट बी इक्वेटेड टू MR2 विच इज इक्वेटेड टू मार्जिनल कॉस्ट. दैट इज फॉर द थर्ड डिग्री. So in the third degree you equate MR of both the market, but here the MR1 and MR2 will be different. नेक्स्ट डिफरेंस होता है थर्ड डिग्री डिस्क्रिमिनेशन से. इन द थर्ड डिग्री डिस्क्रिमिनेशन द कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोड्यूसिंग इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज सेम, बट डिस्पाइट दैट द प्राइसेस आर डिफरेंट ड्यू टू डिफरेंस इन इलास्टिसिटी. बट इन द पीक लोड प्राइसिंग प्राइसेस आर डिफरेंट बिकॉज ऑफ डिफरेंस इन कॉस्ट. कॉस्ट अलग होने की वजह से प्राइस डिफरेंट है. और थर्ड डिग्री डिस्क्रिमिनेशन में कॉस्ट सेम है बट स्टिल प्राइसेस आर डिफरेंट बिकॉज ऑफ डिफरेंस इन इलास्टिसिटी. तो वो पॉइंट आपको इनफैक्ट हाईलाइट करना है व्हेन यू एक्सप्लेन द पीक लोड प्राइसिंग कंसेप्ट. पीक लोड प्राइसिंग कंसेप्ट को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए वी नीड टू एलैबोरेट दैट पार्ट. तो ये पहले प्रेजेंटेशन वगैरह थोड़ा क्लियर रखिएगा, एग्जैक्ट डेफिनेशन वगैरह मालूम हो. अगर आप ऐसे क्वेश्चन इनकेस अगर आपसे फिर से मिल गए, बिकॉज ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस मोर देन 600 क्वेश्चन एंड यू विल बी गेटिंग दोज आंसर एज वेल. आउट ऑफ दैट, और नेचुरली अगर इतने क्वेश्चन हम करके जा रहे हैं तो 80-90% क्वेश्चन तो आपको वहां से मिल जाएंगे. तो अब इट ऑल डिपेंड अपॉन कि वो लाइन जो यहाँ लिखी हुई है वो आप रिप्रोड्यूस कर सकते हो नहीं. दैट पीक लोड प्राइसिंग रेफर्स टू द प्रैक्टिस ऑफ चार्जिंग डिफरेंट प्राइस ड्यूरिंग पीक एंड ऑफ पीक पीरियड. इट मेनली अराइजेस ड्यू टू डिफरेंस इन द मार्जिनल कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन ड्यू टू कैपेसिटी कंस्ट्रेंट. ठीक है, एग्जाम्पल को दे देंगे और उसको फिर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन से रिलेट करिएगा. थर्ड डिग्री डिस्क्रिमिनेशन का यू कैन ऐड दी डायग्राम एज वेल. क्लियर? So this what discussion of section A. सेक्शन A के जितने भी क्वेश्चन है वो मैंने फोर्थ क्वेश्चन तक यहाँ डिस्कस कर लिया. Now over a period of time what may happen कि some question will be repeated because sectional में तो अभी आ जाएगा अलग अलग, फिर जब वो comprehensive में आएगा कुछ similar हो जाएंगे. तो similar हो जाएंगे then in that discussion we may take और इन दैट मॉडल आंसर वी कैन टेक. दैट मीन्स हमने मॉडल अगर उसका दे रखा ऑलरेडी डिस्कस है तो डिस्कशन में स्किप कर सकते हैं, या हमने डिस्कस अगर कर रखा है तो उसका मॉडल आंसर लेटर हो, मतलब सेम क्वेश्चन को एवरी टाइम सेपरेट डिस्क्रिप्शन प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं हो. तो यू हैव टू बेसिकली इनकॉर्पोरेट योर इवेल्युएटेड आंसर शीट, द मॉडल आंसर प्रोवाइडेड बाय अस एंड द डिस्कशन, कंबाइन ऑल, देन इट विल बिकम कंप्लीट. दैट मीन्स आप जब ऐसे इनकॉर्पोरेट कर रहे हैं तो आपको बेसिकली इनकॉर्पोरेट ये करना है, जो आंसर आपने अपलोड किया आप वो इनकॉर्पोरेट करो प्लस मॉडल आंसर देखें टेस्ट का डिस्कशन वीडियो हो रहा है वो देखिए, और डेली आंसर में जो अपलोडेड है और जो डिस्कशन है वो भी देखिए। तो आई थिंक कहीं ना कहीं वो क्वेश्चन आपको मिल जा रहा है डिस्क्रिप्शन में। सो समटाइम्स ओकेजनली ये पॉसिबल है कि फोर्थ बी नहीं लिखा हुआ है या थर्ड ए नहीं लिखा हुआ है, इट मे हैपन ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, ऑल्दो वी विल ट्राई टू मिनिमाइज इट। So I will try to take discussion in section wise. So test number 1 section is so that I can justify with most of the question. Clear? So this was for discussion for test number 1 section A. Next will be for section B. Okay? We'll continue with this. Thank you.